Welcome to JS Online Tuitions. Today in accounts we'll be looking at capital expenditure and revenue expenditure. So we're going to start with capital expenditure. So capital expenditure is incurred when the business spends money either on buying a non-current asset or adding value to an existing non-current assets. Included in such cost is spending money on acquiring a non-current assets, then bringing these items into the business, then legal cost of buying building, then carriage inwards in machinery bought. Then we also have the money that is spent on non-current assets so that they can be made ready for use in the business. So those are some of the examples of capital expenditure. Where you have questions, please ask in the group. Let us look at revenue expenditure. So revenue expenditure is a type of expenditure that is not spent in increasing or in adding value to a non-current asset. So revenue expenditure is expenditure that is not spent in adding value to a non-current asset. We can define revenue expenditure as expenditure that is needed in running the day-to-day activities of the business. And we can differentiate revenue expenditure and capital expenditure by looking at the cost of the van. So the cost of the van can be treated as capital expenditure. Since the van is going to be used in the business for a long period of time, and since it's going to be used for a long period of time, we're going to treat it as a non-current asset. So the cost of buying that van is referred to as capital expenditure. But paying for petrol for that van, we're going to treat it as revenue expenditure, since that cost is going to be used in a short period of time and it doesn't add value to the non-current asset. So let us look at these further examples that are going to differentiate between capital expenditure and revenue expenditure. So the first example that I'm going to give is buying a van. So buying a van, since you're buying a non-current asset, that's going to be treated as a capital expenditure. Then the second example that I'm going to give is paying for petrol cost for that van. So paying for petrol cost for that van that is needed in the day-to-day activities of the business so that the van can work. So we are going to treat it as revenue expenditure. Then repairs on the van. Repairs on the van, that's a revenue expenditure. Then the other example that I'm going to give is adding new overhead lights to the van. So since you're adding new headlights to the van, that's going to add value to the van. Since we are adding value to the van, that means that we're going to treat it as capital expenditure. Then the other example that I'm going to give is buying a machinery. So when the machinery has been bought, that has been treated as capital expenditure since we are buying a non-current asset. Then electricity cost for that machine. So for electricity cost for that machine, that has to be treated as revenue expenditure. The other example that I'm going to give, so for example, if we spend as a business 1,500 on this machine and 1,000 was spent on an item that's going to add value to the machine, and the 500 was spent on repairs. So to divide that 1,500, so the 1,000 that we use to buy a new item so that it can add value to the machine, that's going to be treated as capital expenditure. And the 500 that we used on repairs, that's going to be treated as revenue expenditure. Then the other example that I'm going to give is painting outside a new building. And since you're painting outside a new building, we are adding value to that building. That's going to be treated as capital expenditure. Then the last example that I'm going to give is after 3 years, you repaint the same building. So that is going to be treated as revenue expenditure. So these are the differences between capital expenditure and revenue expenditure. Where you have questions, please ask in the group. Thank you, and I'll meet you next time. And for you to join these online tuitions, they just go at 100 kwacha per month, and that's per subject. For further information, you can call me or text me on WhatsApp on 1973 0236 20. I'll meet you next time. Peace and God bless.